Chapter 27, Old Faces. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 27 of my What If Ash Met Meowth First series. If you're new to this series, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. You were great out there, Misty! You were pretty good yourself! The two best friends grin as they give each other a double high five, finally having a chance to catch up now that their first matches are over. Brock, Meowth, and Pikachu smile as the two battlers talk excitedly about their matches, swapping tips and ideas of how the battles could have gone differently. Brock's just about to suggest that they go to the Pokemon Center so that they can get their Pokemon healed up for their next matches when a woman's voice calls out behind them. Turning around, the trio spots a very pretty young woman dressed in a business suit walking towards them with a man carrying a camera. The instant Brock lays eyes on her, he instantly attempts to sweet-talk her, only this time, instead of Ash being the one to pull him away from the very uninterested woman, it's Misty that pulls him back by his ear. Once she's sure that Brock isn't going to attempt being a Casanova again, she turns to the woman and asks if there's something she needs. The woman smiles at her, introducing herself as Lainey, a reporter from the International League Network. She explains that she was hoping to have an interview with her friend, the one that defeated Maddie using only one Pokemon and made it look like a breeze. She thinks that her viewers would absolutely love to get to know the young man better. Misty is a little put off by the look in Lainey's eyes, almost making her look like a Snorlax that just woke up from a long nap. She tells the reporter that she should probably ask Ash, turning to point to him, only to not see him. Misty looks around in surprise, seeing that Meowth, Pikachu, and Togepi are also gone. Where in the world did they go? He was right here a second ago. Misty turns back to Lainey, apologizing that it seems Ash had something to do elsewhere, but she'll be sure to let him know that she's looking for him. Lainey's smile is downright predatory as she thanks the redhead for her offer before turning and walking away. Misty and Brock find Ash a few minutes later at the Pokemon Center, getting his Pokemon back from Nurse Joy. Spotting them, he greets them, asking what took them so long. Misty responds by asking why Ash left without saying anything, especially since Lainey had been looking for him. Ash blinks, giving Misty and Brock a look of surprised innocence, as he tells them that he'd thought that she was looking for Misty, since it was her that had just won a match. Misty shakes her head, telling him that she was wanting to get an interview from him. She asks if Ash will consider giving her one, since the woman seems pretty determined to get one. Ash hums non-committally before asking if Misty still needs to get her Pokemon checked out before the next round. At the reminder, Misty immediately rushes towards the front desk, reaching for the Pokeballs at her belt as she goes. All thoughts of reporters completely gone from her mind. A few hours later, the group is once again standing at the reception desk, waiting to get their next opponents assigned. While Misty gets some guy that she's never heard of called Pete Pebbleman, Ash finds himself looking at a face that looks oddly familiar. It takes him a solid minute to remember where he's seen that green hair and smug expression before. AJ! Wow, haven't thought of that guy in a long time. Wow, how flattering. The group spins around to see a boy with a familiar mop of green hair. Ash greets AJ politely before asking if he'd hit his 100 winning streak. AJ huffs, looking slightly embarrassed as he says that he didn't. But not because he lost, it's because nobody was challenging him anymore. He'd been forced to go a whole month without any challenges before realizing that if he didn't start his gym challenge right then, he'd never make it in time for this year's Indigo League. Confused, Ash asks why it was so important he got in this year. He's startled when AJ points at him, his index finger right in front of his face, and declares that it's because of Ash himself. He and his Pokemon have been training even harder than ever, just waiting for their chance at a rematch. He knew that someone strong enough to defeat him would make it to the league. So if he was going to have any chance of avenging his previous loss, he was going to have to meet Ash here. That's why it couldn't wait for next year, because next year Ash could be off taking on some other region's league. This was the only time he could guarantee that Ash would be here. Ash leans towards Misty, asking if they'd ever mentioned to AJ that they'd been planning on coming to the league, or if AJ had just guessed. Misty can only shrug, not remembering herself. The receptionist calls the group's attention, asking that Ash and AJ make their way to the rock field for their match, as it should be starting soon. The two boys nod in understanding before heading to their respective areas to wait to be called. Ash sits silently in the waiting room. He's alone because Meowth, Pikachu and Togepi went with Brock and Misty to watch the match, as Ash wasn't planning on taking Meowth or Pikachu into this one, and Togepi is still far too young. Right now though, he would have appreciated the company and someone to talk to. He can't shake the feeling that something is off with AJ. He knows that they hadn't interacted much during their initial meeting, but he doesn't remember him being this dramatic. Did something happen after they left? He's broken out of his thoughts as he hears the announcement for the next match. Standing up, he heads through the doors towards the field, stepping out into the blinding sun. He walks forward to take his place in the trainer box with slow, purposeful steps. On the other side, AJ does the same. The voice of the announcer echoes along with the cheers of the spectators as the two boys are introduced. The announcer explains to the crowd that the match will be a 3-on-3, with the trainer who knocks out all of the other trainers' Pokemon first being the victor. The moment he calls the start to the match, both boys call out their first Pokemon. For Ash, it's Fearow, who he hasn't battled with in a while, and was starting to feel a little left out, while AJ opens with Beedrill. At the sight of the big Pokemon, AJ's eyes narrow as old memories flash through his mind. Memories of the day that he first met Ash, of how Ash had initially refused to battle him, calling him arrogant, and then, when they did battle, Ash had completely trounced him and his Pokemon. Then, Ash's final words, his words of never treating others like they don't matter, that look in his eyes that said, "You're a fool." He then remembers Ash's words at the reception desk. Haven't thought about that guy in a while. AJ growls as he tells Beedrill to open with a poison jab. Beedrill buzzes threateningly as it charges at Fearow, its stingers becoming coated in the purple energy of a poison attack. Ash tries to call for Fearow to dodge, but it's too late, resulting in Fearow taking the hit. Ash calls out to Fearow, asking if he's alright. Fearow squawks back an affirmative, while keeping his eyes on Beedrill. With Ash far away and Fearow's back to him, he doesn't see the purple rash forming just at the base of his beak. Trusting his Pokemon, Ash calls for a counterattack, telling Fearow to use Drill Peck. Fearow caws before charging at Beedrill. His beak becomes coated in white energy, creating a corkscrew spiral of energy. He strikes Beedrill with the point of his beak, causing super effective damage and sending Beedrill flying, but not knocking it out. Determined to claim the first knockout, AJ shouts for Beedrill to use Poison Jab again. However, this time, Ash is able to call for Fearow to dodge with Fly. Beedrill's stingers are met only with air as Fearow soars into the sky with a burst of air. A few seconds later, he dives back down, slamming into Beedrill's back. The giant beast slams into the hard rocky ground, completely knocked out, and scoring a victory for Ash and his Pokemon. AJ grits his teeth as the crowd cheers. Soon, those cheers will be for him. He calls out his next Pokemon, Arcanine, and immediately orders a Flame Charge. Caught off guard by the immediate offense, Fearow is unable to dodge and takes the hit dead on. Ash calls for Fearow to counter with Drill Peck, but this time, as Fearow closes in on his opponent, there's a sudden spasm that ripples through his whole body and he collapses. The referee calls out Fearow's knocked out status and AJ listens as the crowd cheers, vindication tasting sweet on his tongue. But then, Ash kneels next to his Fearow, softly scolding him for hiding the fact that he'd been poisoned. With a soft smile, the Raven returns his Pokemon, thanking him for his hard work. AJ scowls as the crowd cheers even louder, shouts of Ash's name echoing around him. Why? Why are they cheering louder for the loser of the round than the winner? Is it because the win was caused by poison? Well, he'll just make sure that this time the win is from pure power. He remembers asking the gym leaders he challenged if they'd battled Ash. 5 of them said they had, and all of them had praised him highly, their voices full of respect and admiration. All of them expressed that they would have given him a badge without finishing the battle after it had been interrupted for one reason or another. that Ash had insisted on earning the badge the right way. They'd have given Ash gym badges without him beating them in battle. What the heck? He's drawn back to the present by Ash calling out his next Pokemon, Omanyte. AJ can't help but stare in amazement for a moment at the sight of the fossil Pokemon. He didn't even know there were any still alive in this day and age. How had Ash managed to get one? He's so distracted by the presence of the ancient Pokemon that he doesn't realize that it's attacking until it slams into Arcanine with a rollout. Shaking himself, he focuses back on the match. Omanyte may be an ancient and largely unknown Pokemon, but it's still a pre-evolution. Calling out to Arcanine, he tells it to use Wild Charge. Arcanine envelops itself in golden electricity before charging at Omanyte. Omanyte, still in its rollout, quickly spins out of the way, causing Arcanine to crash into one of the many boulders littering the field. Wanting to end the round before Arcanine can hit Omanyte with Wild Charge, Ash calls out to Omanyte to turn around quickly. Unfortunately, Arcanine is able to recover quickly, and AJ seizes on the opportunity, ordering Arcanine to meet Omanyte's rollout with Wild Charge. Arcanine once again encases itself in golden electricity before charging right at Omanyte. The two Pokemon meet halfway, colliding head-on. The clash of the energy creates a mini explosion, kicking up a cloud of dust obscuring the two Pokemon. When it clears, Arcanine is still standing, although only just, while Omanyte is knocked out. AJ grins, waiting for the cheers to explode. However, the response from the audience is once again lackluster. Ash returns his Pokemon, thanking it for its hard work, and reaches for his final Pokeball before pausing. He looks across the field in confusion before asking AJ if he isn't going to recall Arcanine. AJ asks why he would do that, his tone harsh and clipped. Ash frowns, telling the other boy that he was just asking since Arcanine doesn't look like it's in great shape. AJ snaps at Ash to not underestimate them. Arcanine is still more than enough to take out Ash's last Pokemon. Deciding against arguing, Ash simply nods and calls out his final Pokemon, Dratini. The moment Dratini hits the field, Ash calls for her to use Agility. Before AJ or Arcanine can even try to react, Dratini is right in front of the massive dog Pokemon. With a hit guaranteed at this distance, Ash tells Dratini to finish the round with Aqua Tail. The move strikes Arcanine right under the chin, sending it tumbling onto its back with its eyes spiraling. AJ growls as the crowd cheers for Ash's win, once again much louder than they cheered for him. He grits his teeth as he tries to figure out why they keep cheering for the Raven. He'd thought his goal of 100 straight wins before even taking on the gym challenge would earn him admiration. But whenever he asked anyone if they'd heard of the 100 win streak trainer outside of Cerulean, none of it was positive. They'd either say they hadn't heard of him at all, or that they'd heard he was an arrogant jerk. Yet what was Ash's suggestion that he called back Arcanine earlier if not arrogance? Why? What made them so different? They both beat other trainers. They're both strong. Why was Ash remembered positively? Determined to end the battle in his favor, he calls out his oldest Pokemon, Sandslash. After their defeat, he and Sandshrew had worked tirelessly to get even stronger, eventually leading to him evolving into Sandslash. This was their last chance to redeem themselves as the greatest, to prove that they deserved to be cheered and admired. The final round begins and AJ takes the first move, calling for Sandslash to attack with Fury Swipes. However, Ash does something that AJ has never seen before. He calls for Dratini to use two moves at the same time, Agility and Dragon Dance. Agility and Dragon Dance combine to create a maneuver which not only makes Dratini harder to hit thanks to this boost of speed, but increases her offensive power. Wanting to end the battle before Dratini is able to cause any damage, AJ tells Sandslash to use Bulldoze. This time the attack hits, but Ash takes the opportunity, calling for Dratini to use Aqua Tail. The water-encased tail slams into the ground mouse from the side, sending him skidding away. Face set with a determined scale, Sandslash gets back to his feet before charging again with Bulldoze. This time, Dratini dodges once again, causing Sandslash to go sailing past her. Seizing on the chance to end it, Ash calls for Dratini to use Dragon Missile. AJ watches in shock as Dratini shoots through the air faster than his eye can trace, the only indication of where she was being the streak of blue energy from Dragon Rush. Dratini slams into Sandslash at full force, sending him tumbling across the ground before coming to a stop at AJ's feet. Eyes spiraling, it's clear to everyone that Sandslash has been rendered unable to battle, earning Ash's team victory. AJ drops to his knees next to Sandslash, petting his head as he gives a few apologetic cries. AJ shakes his head, telling his starter that he has nothing to apologize for. AJ's the one that's still too weak. You're not weak. AJ looks up in surprise, seeing Ash standing right next to him. He's about to sarcastically ask if he's here to gloat when Ash hands him 3 orange berries. Looking up in confusion, he waits for Ash to explain. Thankfully, it doesn't take long, as Ash tells him to give them to his Pokemon. It's not much, but it'll tie them over until they can get to a Pokemon Center. AJ takes the berries slowly, almost as if expecting them to bite him. What did you mean earlier? I'm obviously weak. I lost. Ash frowns at AJ before telling him that just because he lost doesn't make him weak. That was one of the toughest battles he and his Pokemon have ever had. He holds a hand out to AJ, telling him that he'd love to have another battle sometime. Suddenly, memories rush up on AJ. Not just memories of the gym leaders and the trainers praising Ash, but what they'd been praising him for. It wasn't his strength that they were praising, it had been his kindness and loyalty. It had been his courage when the Celadon City caught fire. It had been his compassion in bringing out the joy of a person that had locked away their heart. It had never been his power that they'd respected. It was his heart. He hears the audience's cheers loud and clear, but it's not Ash's name that they're cheering. It's his. The ghost of a smile tugging his lips, AJ accepts the handshake. Looking forward to it. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as the Pokemon League continues. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.